Ultimate Gohan is back in this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super. That's right, my friends. Gohan and Piccolo return to the wilderness to eat dinosaur tails and beat the living shit out of each other. Because Ultimate Gohan is back! He is ditching the Super Saiyan abilities and drawing from his true raw potential. The abilities which were gifted to him by the old Supreme Kai. Which means lots of white energy and that hilarious piece of hair that drops down, making Gohan look like some sort of Superman. This week's episode of Dragon Ball Super to me was like an all-encompassing episode. We got action, we got training, we got Yamcha shaming, and we even got some brand new characters. Some new Saiyans. 3 of them, hell, maybe even more, because in this week's episode, we finally are introduced to the female Super Saiyan, whose name is Caulifla. Now, of course, this is a pun on cauliflower, and this is a great reference to Broly as well, whose name is a pun on broccoli. And ever since this female Saiyan was introduced, the biggest comparison is that she's essentially a female Broly. You can see that in the intro when she transforms, and you can definitely see a lot of those elements in this week's episode with Caulifla, who doesn't even say anything, but she looks so damn badass. And unlike Kabe, Caulifla sort of comes across as more of a typical Saiyan that we've seen in the series, more like the ones from Universe 7. Very barbaric, very badass, and loving to eat weird, ridiculous anime meat on a bone. Where the hell do they sell this stuff anyway? Has anybody ever seen meat like that? What's of course incredibly important about the introduction of Caulifla is that she is going to be a member of Universe 6's team. Kabe actually goes to this random planet where he's seeking out his old friend by the name of Rensho, who used to be this like commander of this like Planet Sadla force, which Kabe is now the top dog of. And Rensho can't fight anymore, he's got a bad case of Lieutenant Dan legs and he's not going to be able to fight. But he recommends his sister Caulifla, who apparently is the leader of this group of Saiyan punks. And she just sort of hangs out on her throne looking like a badass. That's all we get from her character in this episode, but I'll be damned if I'm not excited to see her in action, and hopefully we'll get to see that pretty soon. The rest of the episode, however, is dedicated to a lot of the familiar characters from the series. What I think I love most about Dragon Ball Super is that we keep diving more into Vegeta's family life. That's something that I think is really fascinating, because in the last half of the series, when he married Bulma and they had Trunks, they still didn't really seem to have too much of a family dynamic. And while there were tender family moments between the characters, like say when Vegeta decided to sacrifice himself to Majin Buu to save his son and his family, they were very few and far between. But we get to see Vegeta actually changing a diaper in this episode, and he does it with absolute style and Super Saiyan badassery. He does it super fast, with Bulma continuing to sort of kick back and having the easiest job in the world as a mother. The fact that she didn't even have to give birth makes it all the more funnier, and we even get some other little comedic moments with Beerus, who has officially become house-trained at this point. I mean, there's this great sequence where Whis is telling him what's going to happen if they decide to tell Bulma that the universe is going to be destroyed if they lose, and getting to see his reactions to Bulma getting pissed off is great. He is basically a house cat. However, the bulk of this week's episode is dedicated to Gohan and Piccolo training, and for about 99% of it, Gohan is getting his ass handed to him. Hell, Piccolo doesn't even have to remove like his cloak and hat for a very large period of time. And what I also love about this is that we get to see some surprisingly cool new techniques from the characters. Pretty much all from Piccolo, but still it's awesome. And the actual fighting scene between them is really great, especially when Piccolo decides to go full force, and I love watching him in battle. He's one of the most unique fighters, just the way he moves, the way that he uses his ki blasts to cut through this massive valley. Or let's talk about the scene where Gohan finally decides to unleash his true potential and go back to being Ultimate Gohan again without the Super Saiyan abilities. There's a great scene where Piccolo's flying towards him and he's getting ready to hit him with his arm, but Gohan actually cuts it off. Now, this is not typically a problem for Piccolo as he can grow it back, but typically when he does lose an arm, he can't really do anything else with it. But he uses this as an opportunity to trick Gohan, and he's actually able to fire a ki blast from his severed arm, hitting him in the back, reminding him that despite the fact that he does have incredible power that borders on God, that he still has to watch out for sneak attacks. This is exactly why he got absorbed by Majin Buu in the first place. It's a really great moment that shows that Gohan has finally gotten back to his true potential, but he still has a lot to learn, and Piccolo makes it very clear that he has the ability to become even stronger. There is a possibility that Gohan could return to greater heights than we could have possibly seen from the series up until this point, and frankly, it's pretty damned exciting. It's also really cool that Piccolo is able to keep up with him, and according to Piccolo himself, he has been doing some training, so that's awesome, because Piccolo, you're my boy. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super, Piccolo made this episode for me. I absolutely love his personality and how he still manages to be such a really hardcore martial arts master, especially when he's training Gohan. He does not give a shit. Piccolo also does a great job of actually like pissing off Gohan enough to sort of unleash his abilities without sort of losing control, letting him know that just wanting to be the best and have extreme power is not exactly enough. Without a good strategy, without like good thoughts, without actually planning out something, it's easy to get sidetracked and attacked by someone in some sort of surprise, and that's always what's happened in this series. And I really love that they showed us that flashback of the Dragon Ball Z sequence where he was fighting against Majin Buu. It also kind of reminded me that the artwork and the animation in the old series was just a lot better. That being said, the flashback was from an episode that did have some pretty damn good animation, and not every episode of Dragon Ball Z looked great. There were some pretty fugly moments, but there were a few moments in this week's episode which frankly just looked bad. There are times when I just want to like shake the Dragon Ball Super animation team. Like when there's sequences like when they're like standing somewhere like on a giant rock and it's kind of far away, you can see like the general look of the characters, but there's like no face that's drawn in, and there's not a lot of detail, and it's like, it would be a lot better if you guys just did a close-up so that we could actually see some freaking detail. Or there's just some other moments that are just disproportionate. There's a portion of the episode where Piccolo's neck, I think, like, triples in size. I don't know, it's strange. But still, there were some really great action moments in this episode, most of which came from Piccolo. I hope to see more abilities of him actually, like, losing his limbs and using those to use ki blasts. And he grew his arm back, like, instantaneously. I'd never seen it happen. Like, he didn't even, like, grunt or do anything or power up. As soon as he hit Gohan with this blast, he starts to fall into his arm. And you can see it's like, just whoop, oh, it's back, no problem now. Maybe he's actually perfected this technique at this point. I mean, he is pretty much 3 Namekians in 1. Although I guess you could argue that Kami is just the other half of him, but whatever. The thing is, this was a pretty solid episode right here, and it was also really great to see some more of the other big parts of the universe. At first, when I saw that spaceship, I'm like, oh god, here we go, another stupid Jacko scene. But luckily, it ended up being something involving Kabe, which I thought was really awesome, or Kabe, whatever you pronounce it, I don't give a shit. It was just awesome to see him and learn a little bit more about the Saiyans from that universe. They're so different from the Universe 7 Saiyans. Like, they're not, like, evil at all. They come across as really good people. But Caulifla is just sort of, like, the one who's the odd woman out. The fact that she's kind of more ruthless and barbaric, and like Rensho said, she's actually kind of a punk. I think she's gonna be a lot of fun. I couldn't really tell that from, like, some of the artwork that they've released of her. She looked like she was kind of deadpan. But this episode makes her seem like that she's going to be really boisterous, loud, and a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see her interactions with Kabe, who's very, very straight-edged. So you know that there's going to be a little bit of tension between those characters. And so, even with some crappy animation, this was a solid episode of Dragon Ball Super. And I'm even more excited for next week's episode, because we're finally going to get to see Tien Shenhan again. And it looks like he's going through a lot of crazy development. It looks like he started his very own martial arts school. It also seems like we're going to be dealing with some zombified characters and even a version of Master Roshi who has been completely taken over by mind control. And it looks like Tien's going to be getting involved. Goku's going to be getting involved. The only person that is missing is Launch. What's the deal, Akira Toriyama? Why will you not bring this character back? She's so important to Tien. Wasn't she obsessed with Tien? Why did she just decide to not be in the series anymore? Maybe they'll address it in next week's episode with a surprise. I have a feeling that's probably not going to happen, but I am excited for it, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that episode. There's only like 9 hours until the tournament, so there's barely enough time before we can gather the rest of our fighters, but it's going to be exciting, guys. Let's just get pumped up for that. So, this was a good episode. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. There were a few animation and artwork moments which just looked like crap, but still, this was an exciting episode which is moving the plot along. Ultimate Gohan is back, Piccolo is still awesome, and the prospect of seeing Tien next week is really exciting, so let's get this one going. Oh, and there is one more thing. thing. Man, they just know that Yamcha is a joke now. Like, at the very end of the episode, they give us this funny bit where he's just sort of, like, pacing in his apartment, waiting for Goku to show up with an instant transmission and beg him to join this tournament. And it all ends with this, like, Looney Tunes-style transition with him just looking like a complete joke. Japan knows it, America knows it, Yamcha is just a friggin' chump, and I'm glad that they're playing him up for laughs. But of course, before you guys leave, make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super in the comments section below. What did you think of the training sequence between Piccolo and Gohan? Will Gohan actually return to his former glory? Will he become even more powerful? What do you suspect is the deal with Caulifla? Will she join willingly? Does she have an ulterior motive? Were you excited to see her character? And what do you hope to see from the Tournament of Power arc of Dragon Ball Super? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Dragon Ball Super anime and manga related. Make sure to leave me a comment or two telling me what you thought about this episode. I'm always down for a good conversation. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.